Welcome to InnerGLOW, the podcast that helps you to ditch anxiety, judgment, stress, and self-doubt, and instead embody ease, confidence, flow, abundance, and self-love. I'm your host, Bhavna Meg, mindset and energy coach, and founder of Stepping Into You. I work with individuals just like you on emotional, mental, and energetic levels to help you to fall in love with yourself and glow from the inside out. This is episode 8. Today we're unpacking anxiety. This is a beast of a subject, given that there are so many experiences and reasons that any single one of us could be triggered into experiencing anxiety. In today's episode, I'll be sharing with you a experience of my own which included some racial and sexual profanity in a workplace. And that led to a massive, massive experience for me. I'll share with you one of the things that I did in that experience to help me to move through that anxious and experience the physical responses that I was experiencing to that situation. So be sure to listen all the way to the end for this really powerful tip, which could, when overused, actually backfire. This was such an unusual experience for me. I've grown up in a very multicultural environment back in London. I can't pinpoint a time where I've experienced any kind of racial comment or sexual comment, to be fair. I was aware that there were discriminations and favoritisms in the workplace, whether you're a man or a woman. And I was very aware of that, but didn't ever feel in myself discriminated. Actually, that's probably not entirely true. When I first started my first official or full-time job in the training and development space, I was very aware that I was a young Indian British woman working in a very male, white, middle-class dominated field. But other than that, I didn't actually experience any racial comments or sexual harassment specifically towards me. Now, in this workplace where this actually happened, it presented itself as graffiti underneath my desk. I forget the exact words, but it was the use of slang and referring to my genitalia and my race, with a very artistically drawn arrow pointing towards where my genitalia would be when I was sitting at my desk. I happened to find it a couple of days after another one of my colleagues had discovered something similar under her own desk, and there'd been an investigation take place into that. I was actually working from home on that day. A couple of days after, I remembered to look underneath my desk, and lo and behold, there it was. I immediately switched into a very practical mode to follow protocol as to investigating what we needed to do practically to ensure that all of the desks were checked and make sure that they had been checked, and to ensure that photographs were taken and really plan out the next steps for communicating what needed to be done with the rest of the office team, the rest of the business, and from a HR perspective, the investigations that needed to take place. My colleague had found the graffiti under her desk on a Wednesday. I discovered it under my desk on Friday. A meeting was organised for that afternoon for the staff that were in the office to communicate what happened. Just before the meeting, I hid myself away in a meeting room on my own and allowed everything to just sink in. I'd been in this very practical state, and once I stopped, the emotions just came to the surface, and it was overwhelming. It felt invasive and intrusive, and I had a cry in the meeting room to let it all out, or let what was coming out before going into the meeting. Now, I'd had the whole weekend, and actually I was home by myself that whole weekend, and I was going through a lot of emotions. It would be okay, and then all of a sudden I would just stop and freeze. I remember going to buy some groceries and standing in the Flannery's and staring at the produce, and it just hit me. And I had a wave of emotions coming up, and I was just trying to be still and breathe through them and try not to break down in the middle of the grocery store. And then I'd be okay. And then again, I would drop and wander and be in this state of feeling like my personal space, feeling like my character. uh, I honestly couldn't find the words to describe what had happened and all of the emotions that I was feeling. There was just a ton of them. That happened pretty much through the weekend. I had a few colleagues call to check in on me to see how I was doing and if I needed anything. And to all of them, I really, again, couldn't express what I was feeling and how I was feeling, and just that it was up and down, and I was trying to process it. I was using my tools as best as I could to clear the emotions that were coming up. On the Monday, I went back to work, and as I was approaching the office, I started to experience what I guess would be called an anxiety attack. My body started to heat up, my hands were clammy, my heart was beating and racing in my chest. I felt choked and felt really, really fidgety. I don't feel like I've experienced anxiety to that level, or so obviously at that level before. It may have been in little microcosms. And I managed to just kind of calm myself and breathe and go in and, get on with my day. I actually don't remember much of what happened on that Monday. I think we had another meeting, and I did speak with my colleague who'd had the same thing done to her desk, and she had been in a state of why me, why me, why me. And I expressed to her that this is not about you. This is about that person that did it. This is all about them and who they are, what they feel, that this action was their choice. I explained to her that if you absolutely have to think about why me, frame it in the way that you are such a nice person that they didn't believe that you would do anything about it. And here you are standing up for something that was incredibly wrong and making sure that it doesn't happen again. The next day, I had exactly the same thing happen. I was approaching the office and had a huge anxiety attack. Heart was racing, shortness in breath, felt choked up my throat and fidgeting, and I had to force myself to take steps forward to walk to the office. I realized that my boss was actually away for the week, and we had a really very good open relationship, and I was happy and comfortable communicating things to him when I was feeling a bit shitty, or if I was having any challenges. I was happy and comfortable communicating those things with him, and would have done so if he had been in the office. But when I got in, I decided that, well, I need to speak to somebody, and I really needed to get it out of my system. It was going round and round and round and round in my head. All of the thoughts were just circulating. And I knew for myself that I needed to express everything and let it come out of my mouth. And I hadn't spoken to anybody all weekend, and except for the couple of colleagues that had contacted me to check in on me. And even on the Monday, I didn't really speak about how it was that I was feeling and all of the thoughts that were going around in my head. And so I called the Employee Assistance Program hotline number and got through to a psychologist who went through the standard questions to make sure that I was safe and there was nothing that she needed to report. And I just unleashed everything. I rattled off everything that had happened, how I was feeling, the conversation that I'd had with my colleague who'd experienced the same thing. A couple of times, actually, she asked me if I'd seen a psychologist before, which the first time I ignored because I thought it was a little bit rude, that she might have been talking down to me, that I was, I had the sense of, please don't call me crazy or tell me that I need to go and see a psychologist more regularly. But then the second time she asked, she actually explained that the tools and the conversations that I've been having are really good ones, and what I'd shared with my colleague was really practical and helpful. So her wondering for whether I'd seen a psychologist before was perhaps that's where I was getting these tips and notes from. And I explained that I was actually a coach and worked with emotional, mental well-being with people. Once I was done, I actually just said to her, I was like, look, my boss is away and I didn't really have anyone to kind of download this with. So that's why I called. I don't need anything else, thank you. And she was happy to complete the call. And that was it. Before we continue with the next part of the show, if what I've shared with you today is resonating with you, leave a review. It goes a long way to help share the love with others who are going through the same things and would benefit from the tips and tools to turn on their inner glow. Another way to share the love is by making a donation at patreon.com/steppingintoyou to share your love with me and with others. So let's move on to the actual change that happened there. The experience that I was having was, as I said, really quite overwhelming on a physiological level. The thoughts and the emotions that I was experiencing were enhancing and creating a loop in my physical experience. The constant rattling around of all of the thoughts, replaying the experience in my head, the wondering of who it was that had graffitied my desk, and whether they were still in the office or not, and whether I would be having a conversation with them or not. All of that was rattling around in my head, adding to the experience that I was having on an emotional and physical level. The thing that I really wanted to do was to express it all. Now, I'm really mindful about who I have these conversations with, because there are people in my life who I can have some conversations with, and they will immediately sympathize with me and feel bad for me and feel sorry for me and feel into the anger of the situation or the frustration of the situation and come at it from that viewpoint. There are people in my life who will have the perspective of, which often is what I would do, what part of you created or co-created this situation. In this particular instance, all I was looking for was a sounding board. Oh, not even a sounding board, just a board. All I was looking for was somebody to be on the other end of the phone or sitting in the other chair across from me, that I could verbalize all of this information that was spinning around in my head, have it exit my mouth so that it could create some quiet and stillness in my mind. So this is going to take us to our tip, and I'm going to be really, really clear about how you do this. So I've just let you into a bit of an insight on this. So it's really important that when we are using this tip, the individuals that we are doing it with are ones that we feel are going to support this listening of the information, and that's it. If you particularly choose to ask a question, ask for advice, that's totally fine. But what you're looking for here is to have the information exit your physical body. If you consider for a moment that all of us is energy, and when those thoughts, as they're spinning around in your head, that's energy. All of that is energy. And if we can move that and direct it into our mouth and out of our mouth and out of our body, we have created a form of release. So for today's tip, consider who it is that you're going to be doing this expression with. When you're, whatever situation that has created this anxiety for you, it's so powerful to move it out of your body. And this is such a simple way to do that, provided we have these boundaries around the conversation. And it's these boundaries that are going to help to create a healthy release. Now, the way that you do this is exactly how I've done it in this particular experience that I've shared with you today. It's simply allowing all of those thoughts to come out of your mouth. Just keep articulating them and articulating the emotions that come up with them until everything is out. Hopefully with the person that you're doing this with, they've just sat, they've listened and allowed and held the space for you. They don't need to do anything else unless you ask them. If at the end of that expression you wish to extract some advice from your friend, then absolutely do so. What I found really powerful in the way that I did it with this particular psychologist on the end of the phone is like I didn't know her. I didn't know who she was. I knew that there was safety in that phone conversation, and there was confidentiality in that phone conversation, and that allowed me to express myself. And those are really two important states that we are often seeking when we want to express our deepest thoughts and emotions. We want to have a sense of confidentiality and safety. So what makes this particular tip backfire? What makes it backfire is, as I mentioned, when you have a friend or the person is starting to sympathize with you, they're starting to feel into the emotional states that you're feeling and then experiencing frustration or anger around the particular situation as well, which is only going to deepen the emotional experience that you're having and enhance it, which is not what you want. The other thing that will make it backfire is the constant repetition. So it's really important when we express things out of our body, we've released that energy to a significant level. And when we revisit and memorize that situation and continue to repeat it with the same level of emotional attachment, we start to re-embed those emotional states and they become a deeper memory for us in our physiology. Which I'm not going to say that it takes a great deal of effort to shift, but we're memorizing things and we're creating a habit within our physical body around that particular emotional state. So we'll go out and seek it more, which is actually going to then have you, in a very unhealthy way, go and share this experience more because you want to feel that way that much more on a physiological level. Now, that might sound a little bit backward because why would anybody want to experience anxiety? But our body has a way, a very intelligent way, and our subconscious has a very intelligent way of experiencing a normal state of being, what is known. And if known is anxious, then that's what it will continue to seek. You'll continue to have conversations that create and support that state of being. So let's quickly recap that tip. When you've experienced a state of anxiety, the idea is to express that out of your body with somebody that you feel safe and where there is a level of confidentiality attached to it. That individual is there to allow and hold space for that expression to take place. Nothing more, nothing less. And again, should you want some advice, invite it. But you don't have to. Express it. Done, move on. That's all for today. I'd love to hear how you get on with that particular tip. And of course, if you've got any other tips and tools that you use to support you when you're experiencing anxious states, I'd love to hear those too. Be sure to join me next week for episode 9, Curbing Guilty Pleasures, where I'll be talking about our naughty habits and what we can do to overcome those and move into states of more health and more balance. Thanks for joining me today, and be sure to subscribe at steppingintoyou.com/innerglow so you don't miss any glowing possibilities. And if you'd love to support InnerGLOW, you can make a donation at patreon.com/innerglow. Sending you love, hugs, and magic.